Hi everybody, welcome back from your breakout sessions. This is part 2 of the Family Creative Learning online workshop, the second one. And we're going to kind of jump into talking about facilitating. And when Rick Rose and I were kind of discussing what facilitators are, we kind of realized that they come in all different shapes, and a lot of people have different definitions of what a facilitator is. But we think the core part of facilitation is what the facilitator does, which is helping learners realize and pursue their goals. And with that in mind, we have a few facilitating fundamental tips to share with you that we outlined in a page of the Family Creative Learning Facilitator Guide, which is my favorite page.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite fundamental?
I do. I also have a favorite fundamental. Actually, the top 2 on this page are my favorites, and we already kind of talked together about trust and relationships. So I think I'll talk a bit about asking questions rather than giving answers, which I think is a really difficult thing to do as a facilitator, because you want the participants to have the right answer, but it's so important to let them discover and figure out answers on their own. It's a fundamental part of the learning process. So as a facilitator, what are ways that you can ask questions and kind of guide learners towards figuring out the answers on their own? And that's not always black and white. I think there's some times where you do have to give away answers.
Yeah, I find it challenging too, like what moments would be productive to do that. For example, a common question that we get when the Scratch workshop starts is like, how do you delete this Scratch cat? And so does it make sense to then go like, well, what do you think? Or to just show them, right click or use the scissors.
Yeah.
But then there are moments though where they say like, well, I want it to go to this far in the screen, and then I want it to turn around, and then jump up, and then I want this sprite to appear. How do I do that? And so that might be a moment where you might ask a question of like, well, wait, so how is it going to walk across? Like, what do you want it to do when it gets to this end?
Like, what can you press to make it move? Maybe we can look in there. Just kind of help guide them towards figuring it out on their own.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, so these are kind of about 10 fundamentals that we felt were just like really core to the practice, and there's lots of things to consider, and you may not apply them all at once, and one thing that we've learned is how you might make certain moves over time. So when families are first there on the first night of the workshops, it's really important to make them feel like they belong and that they're welcome there. So really building those relationships and building that trust can be so important in the first couple of workshops. And as you get to know them better, then you might start making those practices where you kind of challenge them a bit, like asking them questions rather than giving them answers, or connecting them to other resources in the room rather than answering their question like, oh, you might want to ask this person, or really encouraging them to explore and experiment. And asking them, as you get to know them even better, like what if questions, like what if this happened, or making suggestions with their projects. So think about this over time as well. And but yeah, it's something. They're not hard and fast rules.
So another question that I think we get asked a lot is how to get facilitators in the first place, and what's the process of recruiting facilitators like? And I think, Rick Rose, you're kind of a facilitator recruiting expert by now.
Yeah, I mean, Saskia was recruited
by Rick Rose.
But before I jump into kind of like how we've been doing it, I want to share a story of how someone did it last year who adapted Family Creative Learning, which I thought was really cool. She contacted a local college and connected with a professor who was teaching in an education school, and worked with him to kind of, with his students who are trying to become teachers, and worked with them in a way so that their participation and help with the workshops would count as credit for his course. And as part of that, one, they would get this firsthand experience, but they also had to document and reflect about their experience and talk about what it was like in the class. So it became this really great partnership where multiple people were benefiting from that. But more importantly, the facilitators were getting that teaching experience, which is what they were in the ed school first. That was their reason to be there.
I think kind of advocating for facilitation as a learning experience is so huge, where the facilitators are getting that hands-on practice with families, and they're also maybe learning how to design a workshop and getting exposed to practices that would be beneficial for their own work as well. And I was kind of in the same boat where I was a student and really wanted that hands-on work, and reached out to Rick Rose and got kind of pulled into these workshops, and it was an amazing learning experience for me.
Yeah, I think like when I first started the workshops, I would frame it like, "Oh, are you free? I need some help." But then over time, just seeing like how people were learning as facilitators became more of like, this is a learning experience for you as much as you're helping me and this community organization out. So we've given you examples about students, but you can frame this as a learning experience to teen mentors, to professionals who want to get more involved in the community, to staff in your organization that want to learn more about how to design creative environments. So yes, there's so many opportunities to bring people in.
So we'd love to learn a little bit more about how you plan to recruit your facilitators and what different communities or organizations you might tap into.
Yeah, so we'll take a moment to do another kind of chat, sharing questions and ideas in the text chat, and we'll give you about a minute or two to think about it and share
answers.
Cool.
Enjoy the music.
Hi again. Thanks for answering and sharing your responses to our How Might You Recruit Facilitators question. We just have a couple more things before we shift into our breakout groups. One other thought we wanted to share is how might you work together with your facilitators. And one thing we really like to encourage is to see your facilitators as a team, and that you're working together to put these workshops on. And kind of following that thread of really kind of advertising this as a learning experience. So how to treat this like a learning experience. So one, we learn a lot from actually doing the facilitating, but we find our team debriefs really help us to kind of reflect on that experience and to make sense of our learning as facilitators. And one thing that our team does after every workshop is we call it the red, yellow, green reflection. And it's pretty simple. Like green is what were things that were awesome, things that went well, good interactions. Yellow is like, what questions do you have? What felt kind of meh about it? And red is like, what were some challenges, and what are things that could be improved? And we repeat that exercise at the end of every workshop, and we find that people start to notice things more that other people notice, and you become even better noticers of what's going on. And it becomes this really great way to reflect and learn as a team. Franklin, who's in the room, might even claim that he wasn't so into the red, yellow, greens in the beginning when we were working together, but now he's seen like the ways that it really does help us learn as facilitators and improve the workshops.
Yeah, and I do think it really increases the team aspect of it, because we're all reflecting together, we're learning about what was great and what we can change for next time together, and it felt a lot when we did it as a team like a co-design process, like we were thinking through the next workshop together.
Yeah, and this sort of team dynamic doesn't have to start only at the workshops. You can start building it way before the workshop starts in multiple ways. So someone last week asked me, like, how do you prepare your facilitators to, especially if they don't know Scratch or know Makey or might even be technophobes. And one thing that you might do as a team is to learn the tools together and to actually walk through the activities and be learners first, and animate your name together in Scratch and make a musical instrument with Makey Makey, but add this component of still reflecting on that experience, like what was helpful for you to learn things, what was hard, like what was confusing, and what questions do you still have. So like keep continuing that reflection even in that space, and yeah.
And I still think too that even when you're learning together, it's a great idea to kind of play to each other's strengths. So if there's one person on the team that's maybe really good at documenting or taking pictures, that they can assume the documenting role. And kind of as you divide up the roles on the team, you can use what people are interested in as a way to kind of determine what they take over. In our workshops, we had a documenter. We had a person who was planning the logistics, so kind of took care of all the details of the workshops, the food, organizing the materials, the transport of the materials. We had people who took over certain sessions, so there was one person who was in charge of the parent meet and one person who was in charge of the children meet. And there was also, during the make time, we all split up into kind of quadrants, so each of us was in charge of a section of the room. So everybody kind of had a position, had a place, had a role as we were going through the workshops.
That's also a nice way to avoid over facilitation, where like sometimes you just finished working with someone. In fact, you did this thing where you asked them a question and then you're like, okay, I'm going to back off while they think about it, and then someone comes in and answers the question for them. It's happened. So that's something to kind of keep in mind.
Yeah. And the last thing is maybe you have another person on the team who's just in charge of the younger siblings, or kind of making sure that they have some tasks to keep them happy and occupied during the workshops.
Cool. So we went through various things about facilitating and working together as a team, and we wanted to also leave you with 3 ideas to kind of keep in mind from this topic.
The key points.
The key points. So one is facilitating is helping learners pursue and realize their ideas and taking those ideas seriously. 2 is recruiting a diverse team and pulling from the people in your community, whether it's students or team mentors or professionals or even staff in your organization. And 3 is treating facilitation together treating it like a team, like a co-learning experience, and really trying to leverage reflection.
Yep. Great. So we're about ready to jump into our second breakout session. So just like last time, if you are kind of feeling like you're not quite sure about the workshops, then jump into Karina and Franklin's session. And if you're ready to go, then you can jump into my session or Rick Rose's session. And after that, we won't be coming back to the Unhangouts. This is the last that you'll see of our video. And we will end our second workshop.
Cool.
Great.
We'll see you in real time now.
Okay.